Console, online. HPG connection, online. Educational module, online. All systems, nominal.
Hello, class, and welcome to episode 28 of On the Origin of Battlemechs Podcast. I am your host, Brent Stewart McKee. My co-host today is...
I'm Joshua.
And today we are talking about the Stinger, one of the iconic and also unseen light mechs.
Yes, one of the best terrible mechs.
So, the Stinger is the second light mech produced for the Terran government. Earthworks developed it to fill the quick-growing market for mechs of every size and speed. The total number of Stingers and each of their models is debated, but the number produced by the Terran hegemony before their fall was over 200,000 on a number of worlds. Despite this estimate, the Stinger cockpit count at the onset of the Fourth Succession War was approximately 5,000. The Stinger has not seen a point since it was introduced when it was not in production in some way, and once introduced, the Stinger would be the mech that stomps through the nightmares of the infantry until it was unseated by the Firestarter. Early on, the Wasp and the Stinger were often mistaken for each other. The defining feature of the two is the difference in their cockpits. The Stinger, of course, has a more compact cockpit.
On the manufacturing topic, if you look at Sarna and you look at the manufacturer, you've got a ton of them compared to other mechs. Each of the major periphery nations has a manufacturing plant, including Detroit, which is a minor periphery planet that has been in and out of multiple different periphery nations.
Mm-hmm.
It's just produced everywhere by basically anyone who makes a mech.
Yeah, you can probably whip together a line to produce one of these. So it has the design quirks of being rugged, ubiquitous, and a cramped cockpit. So the first model we have is the STR-3R. And when Earthworks unveiled the Stinger in 2479 with its similar movement profile, layout, and the same fusion engine as the Wasp, GM immediately accused Earthworks of copyright and IP infringement. Earthworks took the stance of convergent design evolution, but GM filed a lawsuit, and the action for the next 20 years would have little to no effect as the Stinger rolled off or ran off the line unimpeded by the legal proceedings until GM just simply gave up and dropped the suit. The 3R, and to a lesser extent the Stinger in general, has found a second life as a dedicated training mech, as the machine guns have iron sights, forcing the pilot to manually aim the weapon. This training has been espoused as exceedingly useful and opens pilots' minds to the reality of the mobility and range of motion a mech offers compared to other traditional military hardware.
I find that amusing that they have iron sights on a 20-ton hyper advanced war machine.
Well, the iron sights are very clearly a holdover from the fact that the original Wasps, the unseen Wasps, had the modular weapons, which have since been retconned into integrated weapons.
Yeah.
But, I mean, as a training purpose mech, that seems very useful. So this guy's got a walking profile of 696. It has a machine gun in the right arm, a machine gun in the left arm, and a medium laser in the right arm. It's got the 10 single heat sinks and not a lot of armor. It does what it says on the side of the package, right?
Yep. I mean, in the pro column, it can jump its max and alpha strike and still not generate any heat. In the cons column, it's a 20-ton mech with 3 tons of armor that has a maximum movement speed of 90 kilometers an hour, or 9 hexes. So,
which is good, but it's not where you want to be. You really want to be a little bit quicker with that 20 tons.
Yeah, speed is armor when you're this light, and a 7-11-7 at the very least would bump it up into the next jumping bracket, let you potentially hit that 10 plus bracket for the best movement profile when you're best targeting modifier when you're running.
Mm-hmm. But this is the first model, so I'm sure we'll get there over time.
Hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Not always, but once or twice.
I do kind of like it. Like I said, it's one of the best worst mechs out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, the fact that it's got fully articulated hands, the fact that it's got the full range of motion is never something that can be undersold.
Yeah, especially in the beginning of Battletech when you've got mechs doing shoulder rolls and performing acrobatics that you don't see in more modern incarnations of the lore or the video games.
Mm-hmm.
But it does have that medium laser, which gives it firepower on par with the AC-5, which, like we've said before, is the main battle tank benchmark. It's got 2 machine guns to deal with infantry. It's got enough armor to protect it against infantry weapons. It's mass-produced enough, it's cheap enough that you can field a lot of these. I'm not going to call it a trooper mech for once. Yes, I know it's probably a joke at this point, but it lacks the versatility and the firepower and the protection to really fulfill that role for me.
Yeah, this is a scout. It runs up, sees what it sees, and then runs away. And if it's got some squishy targets it can step on along the way, so much the better.
Yeah, it can be redeployed quickly to support infantry who are hung up against other infantry, or even infantry who are hung up against light combat vehicles. So it's got a lot of flexibility. It just gets really sad when it has to deal with heavy hover tanks or heavier battle mechs.
Mm-hmm. So it's got a battle value of 359 and a point value of 14. And it is followed in with the 3G. And the 3G model is designed to take on other mechs, unlike the previous model, which was designed to take on infantry. And it does this by replacing the machine guns for an additional medium laser, and this increases the firepower, but it also comes with an increase in heat.
It also adds a little bit of extra armor.
Yeah, and never can complain about that.
Yeah, and I don't know if I would call this an anti-mech mech, but at least you've got 2 of those medium lasers now, and a little bit more armor.
This feels more like a scout mech that is designed to not immediately run away from something, but maybe, engage and bait them back into an ambush.
Yeah, or you got infantry calling for support against a vedette or something. You can rush this guy over and he'll be able to deal with that light tank.
Yeah, this guy would definitely shine in taking on armored units to help free up the infantry that are bogged down. Just those 2 medium lasers on 20 tons, and if you can mass produce them, you can probably field a lance of them. They could just sweep from one side to the other. So this guy was seen in 2581, and he has a battle value of 497 and a point value of 14.
And he's followed up by a royal variant of the 3G.
So this guy is the royal version, and the SLDF improved upon the stock Stinger with the addition of many new technologies unavailable when the mech was first designed. With the mass freed up by using the XL Fusion engine and the Endosteel frame, the mech's top speed was increased to 119 kilometers an hour, and the jump capacity was bumped to 210 meters. At the same time, an additional medium laser was mounted on the center torso along with a small in the head, and thankfully double heat sinks were also introduced, and the armor protection was increased again and again. That's a good thing. But yeah, just having those bump up to double heat sinks with the 3 medium lasers and 1 small laser makes me not cringe immediately. And of course it has a nice speed profile of 7.11.7, which is, what you were hoping for.
Yeah, that 7 jump really makes a difference, because you're taking that +3 penalty to your shooting, but handing out a +4 to the enemy. That's big, especially for a guy who only has 4.5 tons of standard armor. Again, he feels like we're dealing with light tanks, light armor. He's definitely got the speed to range out in front of a fast-moving armored formation to look for enemy units.
I could easily see this guy staring down a commando.
Or at least running circles around it.
That as
or
well.
Trying to. I think
just
for me...
jump over top. That's all you gotta do. Rear arc. Jump over top.
Yeah, I think for me, I would like to see them trade a small laser and a medium laser for a machine gun or even 2 machine guns and a half ton of ammo. That way you'd have 2 medium lasers, 2 machine guns, and you really get the best of both the 3R and the 3G.
For that, you might have to cut some armor or something, but no, for an SRM, I think would be nice in there too, instead of the machine guns, because the medium laser will swap out for an SRM2, and then you'd probably have to cut a little bit of weight for the ammo, because the small laser is only half a ton.
Yeah,
but
still 4 tons of armor, 2 medium lasers, and an SRM2. Yeah, I can see that. That definitely gives it a lot of flexibility and gives it some high explosive capability.
Which, of course, we have espoused many times in previous episodes.
HE kills.
But this model, regardless of any what-ifs we are thinking about, has a battle value of 674 and a point value of 22. So then we take the traditional break of going from the Star League to the 3050s, and we have the Stinger 5M. M for Merrick.
Yep.
This unit was produced after the discovery and distribution of the Helm memory core, and uses all the rediscovered tech therein, adding endo-steel and a anti-missile system. This unit was produced by Earthenworks Incorporated on Keystone and Callaway 6 in 3050, and it has the anti-missile system in the right arm, a medium laser in the right arm, and a flamer in the left arm. It's got a movement profile of 696, and it goes back to the 10 integrated heat sinks, which are singles.
Yeah, and for once, this time gap is not because it went out of production. It's just because the 3R and the 3G, and if you're lucky, the 3G Royal, basically do everything you need a Stinger to do, and there were over 200,000 of them.
Yes. And this guy, of course, has the endo steel, which is hard to produce, unlike the traditional frame that's in the 3R or the 3G, and so you could just keep slapping those together because it never became lost tech.
An interesting note on the 5M, TRO 3050 says the Torian Concordat is the second largest producer of Stingers in the 3050s.
Really?
Outproducing the Lyran Alliance.
Wow.
Only the Free Worlds League and their Earthworks plant produces more Stingers. Now, I don't think the Torian Concordat is producing 5Ms. At this point, they're still producing the originals, but yes.
We're talking raw numbers, not specific models.
Yeah, so this 5M really gets back to the anti-infantry duties with that flamer. Little protection from incoming missile fire with the AMS. 696, going back to that is kind of sad, but, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Well, it does go back to the regular fusion engine, unlike the Royal, which had the XL.
Yeah, it's a bad mech, but it's one of the better bad mechs because it knows what it wants to do, and that's find enemy formations and support infantry against other infantry. And in both those roles, it's halfway decent.
So after that, we have the Torian Concordat unit, the 5R, and this unit, of course, was backed by the Word of Blake, so that makes it less appealing, at least to me. This unit was a appreciated upgrade for Stinger pilots as it replaced the cramped cockpit with a full head ejection system. Full units and upgrade kits were produced on Vandenberg, Pinard, and Detroit in 3067, and this guy is the first one, at least I have from my record sheets, that has the non-blacked out unseen. So we get the new art, and we haven't really talked about the previous art, which is nice. I mean, obviously if you can find the non-blacked out versions, you can see the full art and appreciate it, but I think it looks good. It's not overtly inspired in any particular direction, but the almost brick cockpit gives it some personality, and it is a humanoid robot,
I mean, to me, it looks a lot like any of your Robotech Macross stuff.
Yeah, because of course that is where it's from. But
yes.
Then we have the Turian version, which is a little more distinctive. It still has that brick head, but now it just has the rocket launchers on either side of the torso. It's got more of a stylized look on the legs so that it is a independent image or design. And we're just going to see different variations on that, mostly around the chest where the weapon ports move or shift from one system to another.
It's interesting going from the original TRO 3025 art, which is very much a Gundam, to the Project Phoenix art, which is the Rescene art. Because like I mentioned earlier, early Battletech novels and other sources have Battlemechs doing all sorts of acrobatics, combat roles, that kind of thing. The art for the original Stinger, the head is articulated and turned to the side looking at something. When we get to the Rescene art, we see signs of how Battletech has kind of moved away from the full humanoid articulation, more machine-like walking tank concept.
More of a realistic, restricted range of motion.
Yeah, the head looks like it's fixed in place. Its limbs are still quite agile looking, but it feels more restricted and walking tank-like than the original Stinger.
Which is not necessarily a bad thing.
No, it's just interesting to see how the frame franchise evolved.
So the 5R has a movement profile of 696, a rocket launcher 15 in the right torso, a rocket launcher 15 in the left torso, and a ER medium laser in the right arm.
Still has the 10 heat sinks.
Yep. So just really got those rocket launcher 15s for when you're in a pinch or if you need to take down something that turned a corner at you weren't prepared for, and the medium laser is what you rely on most of the rest of the time.
I mean, it really is a straight upgrade from the 3R. You've taken that 2 machine guns and that 1 ton of ammo and replaced them with rocket launcher 15s for the exact same tonnage. And then you bumped up the medium laser to an ER medium laser for the tonnage. You know, it does say in the TRO that the Word of Blake's involvement wasn't so much in the design. It was in the fact that the Taurians didn't have a factory that could produce the amount of ferrofaboris armor they needed to make this thing. And so that's what the Blakeists did, was provide them with the plans to make a larger ferrofaboris manufacturing plant.
Still don't like having their fingers in that pie.
Yeah, it's still got 3 tons of armor, but now it's apparently ferrofaboris armor, which gives you a slight upgrade in the armor value. So that's good, even though the tonnage stays the same.
Yeah.
And we were talking about maybe putting SRM2 in there and how that would high explosive kills. This guy's got rocket launchers now, so
that's covered.
Yep.
So it's got a battle value of 492 and a point value of 14. And then we pop over in the same year to the 6L that was produced on Detroit and Cyan for the Capellan Confederation and the Magistry of Canopus. This guy has
stealth armor.
It's got a movement profile of 812, so definitely able to book it. It has a Guardian ECM suite in the center torso, a medium laser in the right arm, and a medium laser in the left arm. It's got 10 double heat sinks, endo steel, that stealth armor that was mentioned, and yeah, this guy is pretty sweet. It loses the jump jets, which is unfortunate, but it can move, so it's not super hurting because of that.
Yeah, I mean, you need to stick to open terrain to really get the most out of this movement profile, but yeah, you move a lot faster. Your stealth armor helps you keep that speed is armor concept going. I mean, it's not a terrible mech. It is a terrible mech, but it's not a terrible stinger.
See, now you keep saying the stingers are terrible. I don't think they are terrible. I think they fill a role, because not everything can be a amazing mech. Something has to fill out the bracket from armor to the Omni-Mechs, and this does a good job at that. You're probably not going to pilot it, but you're probably going to shoot it down a bunch.
Yeah, I mean, from gameplay terms, you need bad mechs to be fielded by the bad guys so that you can kick the out of them as a player. But rules-wise, these are bad mechs. I think in a realistic situation or a realistic scenario where you're not dealing with dice and rule books, but actual combat machinery, these things are good, and they have a role that they fulfill. I don't think they're great, though, outside of a very narrow niche, because you can, for a similar cost, you can get an ice-engined heavy hover tank with an AC-10 and a machine gun and better armor, same speed, significantly heavier firepower, that in the same kind of open terrain where this Stinger 5R, wants to operate, it's just gonna keep up with it and punch giant gaping holes, rip off arms. The Stinger, at this point, the 6L would need to stay in more hilly terrain where the heavy hover would be slowed down a little bit going up and down hills. But at least a 5R can jump in and out of forests and really difficult terrain where the hover can't keep up. But again, wide open worlds, you're not going to put most of your important places in really rough terrain unless you absolutely have to, because that's where the resources are.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think we can agree that the Stinger inhabits a niche that is important, but it does not make us excited.
I mean, I don't think I would ever put any Stinger in an Alpha Strike list or a classic Battletech list unless I was jamming.
Yeah. I might take the Royal if it was a very specific, weight restrictions or something like that.
Yeah. And part of that's the game rules don't really have a good spot for these light guys, have a good role for them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why I keep saying they're terrible, but they're good. You know, it really depends on what you're looking at.
Yeah, it's all about the framing. So it has a battle value of 680 and a point value of 22. So after that, we come to the 3P. That guy is first seen in 3068, and this unit has Endosteel and Ferrofibrous armor to increase its overall protection. This unit was a snap upgrade for any Steiner pilot. Despite the need to manage the heat more closely, this unit was popular in the Larian Commonwealth and the Larian Alliance when it was known as that, and also the Draconis Combine and the Word of Blake when they got their hands on it. It has a movement profile of 696, and it has a light PPC in the right torso, 10 single heat sinks.
So the Stinger is the first mech we're dealing with that doesn't use letter suffixes that correspond to the nation it was built in, which kind of bugs me.
Yeah, it's a break with tradition.
Or, which is weird because this is one of the earliest mechs in the franchise.
Yeah.
But, I kind of like this Stinger. It's, of all the bad Stingers that are kind of good, this is going to be the best bad Stinger.
This Stinger, I feel, is really doing a very good pack hunter impression, but it's still an impression.
Yes, because it's a light PPC and it's like half the weight of a pack hunter.
Mm-hmm. But that light PPC's extended range up to 18 is nothing to balk at. It's, obviously has the heat trade-offs there, but I think the 3P, P for PPC obviously, is a decent mech. I think this one is solid, and I don't think anybody who picks it would be making a bad choice. I think there would be better choices, but I don't think it's a bad choice.
Yeah, for the Stinger, this light PPC gives you that same firepower that you're used to with your medium laser, but it lets you put it out much further. Once again, this guy has a problem with survivability, so if you can extend the ranges you engage at, that does a lot for your chances of survival.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I dislike the idea that this is a field refit put out to help keep the sheer number of Stingers available during the Jihad useful during the Jihad, and largely because of the Endosteel structure. That's not a field refit.
No, and the overall rebuild of the right torso, that's not something you're doing in the field. Like, we're using field refit in air quotes here.
Yeah. A lot of times they use field refit well, and it's a cool concept, but this one just...
It's an overreach.
Yeah.
So it's got a battle value of 489 and a point value of 14. That brings us to the 5T, which is got a movement profile of 696, an MML3 in the right torso, an MML3 in the left torso, and 10 single heat sinks. The heat is not a huge issue on this guy, but it's a little light on the armor for my taste, and the MMLs are cool and neat, and I think they're great. But the question, of course, always comes down to ammo, and it has a single ton of each, which is not terrible, but it's still underwhelming overall.
Yeah, it's good enough for your standard classic BattleTech game. I mean, it's a Stinger. It's always they've all got really bad armor, but this still has the 3 tons and it's Ferrofibrous, so it's not as bad as the originals.
Mm-hmm. But this guy can mainly be found in the Turian Concordat, the Magistry of Canopus, and the Capellan Confederation, especially on the borders with the Federated Suns, and the Turians have had great effect with this unit.
Yeah, I honestly, if I want to drop one of those MML3s for, a couple medium lasers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just having everything be missile-based is
rough.
It's not bad, but it feels less than optimal. It's got a battle value of 341 and a point value of 14.
And after that, we get to the 6S, one of the handful of Stingers I have bookmarked in Mech Factory. The 6S is finally I guess the 6L was also House Liao. The 6S is House Steiner. So we're getting back into that nomenclature we've gotten used to.
Mm-hmm.
It's rocking a light fusion engine, so a little bit more survivable than an XL, but it definitely saves you some tonnage, which it uses to get a 711-7 movement profile, and they added mask, so it can get up to a 14 hex movement, which is really good.
Mm-hmm.
And its weaponry gets back to that original 3R Stinger with 2 light machine guns and an ER medium laser.
It also adds heavy ferro, and this thing... It's got 10 integrated single heat sinks, but the heat is not a huge issue, especially since the light machine guns don't generate any heat. It can go. Like, this thing, blink and it's gone. And that, as we've mentioned many times, when you're a light mech, speed is armor. So that is good.
Firing everything, basically your medium laser, and jumping 7, which we've talked about how good jumping 7 is. You generate 2 heat over what you can sink. So
it'll add up over time, but you can easily walk that back by just skipping the medium laser 1 turn.
Yep. Solid, fast, kind of scout, deals with enemy infantry well. Again, not a good mech, but it's a good at what it does if you're dealing with enemy infantry and scouting for enemy forces over large distances.
Yeah, especially the large distances.
Yep.
So it was produced in 3069 by the Larian Alliance and then the Larian Commonwealth, once it, of course, changed its name back. It's got a battle value of 478 and a point value of 17. And we jump back down to the 5G. This guy has a light PPC in the right arm and a PPC capacitor. It's got a movement profile of 7, 11, 6. It's got 10 double heat sinks, got an XL fusion engine, and it's got an endosteel frame.
This guy makes me sad because he lost 1 point of jump, so he no longer gets that wonderful jump 7.
It's true, but it does double your damage with that PPC capacitor, and the heat is no problem with this guy, so that's not too bad.
Yeah, well, I mean, you need all that extra heat because of how you generate heat every turn with a PPC capacitor, even when you don't shoot it. So
yeah, if it's charging, you're getting 5 heat.
Yep, and then when you fire it, again, you get 10 heat because of the 5 from firing the PPC and then the 5 from the capacitor. Yeah, I mean, not much to say here.
No, it's just an update to the 3. Yeah, it's just an update of the 3P.
Yeah.
It does it a little better, but it loses that speed, which is really going to hurt it overall. It's got a battle value of 614 and a point value of 17.
And then in 3077, we get the final stinger on our list, the 7S. This guy, again, made my bookmark for Alpha Strike because he's really cheap, and he jumps 8. He's got a movement profile of 698, so 8 improved jump jets. His only weapon is a single ER medium laser. He's got 10 single heat sinks, so he's going to run a little hot. An XL fusion engine, endosteel chassis, and 3 points of standard armor. So going back to that original armor profile.
And yeah, he's a Steiner Scout Lance mech that you'll probably shoot when you're facing Steiner.
Yeah, I mean, I like that he jumps 8. That's about the only thing that is really good about it.
Yeah, like the improved jump jets, and that's neat, that's great, but it's not enough to really make it something you want to write home about.
Yeah.
So it's got a battle value of 382 and a point value of 13.
Which, again, like I said, he's cheap. He is actually the cheapest stinger for Alpha Strike. And the third cheapest by battle value.
So the 7S is the last on our stinger list, but it's not the last on the list because we have the Stinger 2C. And this guy is designed as a totem or a symbol of the New Raven Alliance, the merging of the Outer Worlds Alliance and Clan Snow Raven. The mech was the first of many proposed light designs to supplement their militaries, and the deal was struck when Joanne Eschry, CEO of Alliance Defenders Limited, proposed an upgrade to the existing 3R to Clan Tech standards.
And the reason the Snow Ravens were willing to make this deal with the Outworlds Alliance was the Outworld Alliance had Stinger production capabilities, and the Snow Ravens and the Outworld Alliance scout forces were getting heavily depleted by constant scouting and skirmishing operations with the Draconis Combine.
Yeah, the symbolism of combining the two was continued and honored as the production is evenly split between the Raven clusters and the Alliance militias, and the ceremonial first shipment to each organization left the factory at the same time in 3085. The mech is a resounding success as both Alliance and Raven warriors have accepted the machine with open arms. So, that's good, because if you're having a national pride mech, you want everybody to love it.
Well, I mean, if you're a Stinger pilot in the Outworlds Alliance and you've been shot out of your traditional Intersphere Tech Stinger, and it gets replaced by a Clan Tech Stinger with...
No one's going to stick their nose up at that.
No. I mean, the 2C has 2 improved heavy medium lasers.
Which have a heat of 7 and a damage of 10, because I don't believe we have covered those at any point.
Yeah, well, we haven't touched on anything clan yet, so.
It's true. But those days are quickly approaching us. It does have double heat sinks, which lets it deal with that heat quite efficiently. It's got a movement profile of 696, and it also has a anti-personnel Gauss rifle.
Basically a Gauss machine gun.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, this guy's packing 2 10 points of damage weapons, and then that AP Gauss rifle has it's a machine gun with the same range as a medium laser. So,
yeah.
I mean, he can't alpha strike and maintain heat neutrality while he's jumping, but he comes darn close to it.
Yeah, he's a real nice piece of tech. Of course, it's also got Ferro and the Endo Steel. It's really got some interesting art, though. Like, it definitely goes more towards a boxier, almost industrial look, which is not bad, but it is a little jarring considering all the rest of the models tend to be a little bit more smoothed down, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, well, one, it's a 2C, which tend to have kind of exaggerated art compared to the originals.
Absolutely.
Which I don't think we've ever touched on 2Cs, or ever gone over a 2C before, at least.
I think we've done one, but we didn't go in depth to it. But the long and the short of it is the 2Cs are clan versions. They basically are built from the ground up using clan tech, but the schematics of the inner sphere original design templated over, and they tend to exaggerate certain features to make them very iconic or noticeable or distinct.
Yep. A lot of them were an attempt during the Unseen era to introduce the Unseen mechs back, but have them be different enough to not get a copyright strike.
Yeah, and they had limited, or should I say varying success with that.
Almost none. The artwork for this guy, though, to me feels like this is a MechWarrior Dark Ages design.
You know what? You're not wrong. It does very much feel like a MechWarrior Dark Age design. It's definitely got that almost... The designs then tended to have a molded design for casting, like the production of the minis informed what was being drawn up and printed, if I am making sense.
Yeah, I understand what you're getting at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're very industrial looking, all of them, and the artwork tends to have kind of an industrial feel to it.
Raw machinery look.
Yeah.
So this guy's got a battle value of 730 and a point value of 22. It also has the design quirks of a combat computer, cramped cockpit, and difficult to eject. And then that brings us to the Stinger 2C2. And we do not have a battle value for this guy, but we do have a point value of 22. It is mentioned in the prototype's TRO, and the difference between the 2C and the 2C2 is it removes the anti-personnel Gauss rifle and appears to downgrade the engine as its speed is lessened when compared to the 2C. This tonnage is used to upgrade the weapons to improved heavy large lasers, causing a heat buildup issue, but this model excels at hit and run tactics, which the Alliance warriors tend to favor.
So I'm looking at an app that has this one listed, and it's showing the AP Gauss was swapped up to an improved heavy laser, large, but it kept the medium improved heavy lasers.
Oh, so it just added another one, eh?
Well, it added a large one in place of the AP Gauss.
Well, that would definitely add some heat issues.
Yes, 18 points of heat, 16 points of damage on that improved heavy large laser.
Mm-hmm.
It says the movement profiles 585, medium mech movement profiles.
Yeah, I'm sure we will see more of this as time progresses. So, for our pilot profiles today, we are going to start off with Tai Marge Sippers. Started her career at the age of 16 and became an avid supporter of the Horde tactics championed by Captain Mercer Ravoni, her commanding officer. Her devotion is believed not to be rooted in the value of the tactics, but her infatuation with Mercer. Despite this, after his death, she rose to the rank of captain and continued to use the Horde tactics much more successfully than Mercer ever did, but she also opted to trade out several of the Wasps and Stingers in her units for more heavily equipped Jenners.
I do like the Jenner.
I like the Jenner, except its lack of armor.
I mean, it's a light mech.
Yeah, it is what it is. All right.
Yeah, I've got Captain Scope Kinuga. Apologies on my pronunciation there. I know I got it wrong. At one point, he was a well-known mech warrior, but he basically broke his oath to House Kurita and joined the Magistry of Canopus. He apparently had fallen in love with the Magistrix of the Canopus at the time, Kyala, and ever since then, he's piloted his Stinger, renamed the Centrellan Hope after the Canopan royal house's name, Centrella, and apparently is an important addition to the Canopan forces. He had fought in at least 50 different battles in service to Kurita. He is now in charge of MechWarrior scout training in the Magistry of Canopus.
Well, you can never be upset with adding diversity of tactics to your stable, right?
I mean, unless you're the Curitans who lost one of your top Stinger pilots to some hussy from the periphery.
Well, someone's gain is someone else's losses, right?
Yep.
Next, we have Sergeant Theresa Davenport. She was a member of the Rachba Resistance, and she fought the Blakists the entire occupation, but only gained a mech in the last year of fighting. She used her Stinger's light PPC to draw out a Blakist force 3 times before they became wise to the plan, and on the 4th attempt she was downed by the gun emplacements. Stubbornly, she refused to retreat until the gun emplacement was destroyed. She was successful, but narrowly avoided capture by the Blakist forces.
Moving over to House Davian, we have Mech Warrior Bors Cylinder, a member of the 1st City Hussars. He has had more stingers shot out from under him than any other mech warrior, dead or alive, with a record-breaking total of 9 stingers either destroyed or disabled with him at the controls. He seems to be one of the luckiest mech warriors to ever step into battle, since he survived each one of those destroyed mechs. Regardless of the fact that getting constantly shot out of stingers, he has no intention of giving up his mech warrior status, and always finds a new stinger to replace the most recent lost. He's named all of his stingers Lots of Luck, and he is currently on Lots of Luck number 12. And he says he will keep number 12 longer than all of the other Lots of Lucks.
Wasn't that the hope for Lots of Luck 11?
And probably 10 as well.
Yeah.
Of course, if he's been shot out of 9 and he's on 12, I feel like he's inflating his numbers to make the story even bigger.
I mean, he wouldn't be the first person to do that. All right, so next up is Ensign Alexander Rice. And Rice is a Magistry military and part of the contingent on the Capellan raiding forces of New Hessen in 3084. Ensign Rice showed extreme skill and ability by using the 5T Thunder long-range missiles and smoke SRMs to confuse the enemy into thinking he was an entire lance and baiting them into a minefield. The Republic forces he faced were hamstrung by having no mech units, and Alexander took a by-the-book engagement and outwitted his enemy. He is believed to be on the fast track for promotion. And next up, of course, is our data dive segment. So this guy is going to be a bit more of a discussion, and because we're talking about the Stinger, we decided to talk about LAMs. Land Air Mechs, because of course the Stinger is the most iconic and successful LAM.
We're on the lam today.
And of course, we're not going to cover lambs in the actual episodes because they are a category unto themselves, and we have a big list of mechs to get through before we ever touch another category. But we figured talking about them right now wouldn't be out of place, and
they are such a iconic part of the setting, and you need to know about them if you're a new player. If you're an existing player, you probably already know about them and fall into one of two camps that either loves them and wants any excuse to bring them out, or loathes them and is glad that they're no longer a core piece of the game.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you have listened to this podcast in any extent, you probably have picked up on the fact that I always try to be positive. There's a lot of bad stuff in the world, so let's look at the positive things. Let's be good to each other. So I always try to say positive things. So when I say that I do not like lambs, know that I'm coming at it from a place where someone has looked at this pretty extensively and just is like, no. You have fun over there, but no.
Now, why do you dislike lambs? Is it the concept? Is it the mechanical silliness of it? Is it the links to the Unseen era?
So I have no problem with the links to the Unseen era and I understand absolutely how they were introduced into the setting, and obviously they are an artifact from the anime influences. I don't actually have a problem with that. My issue is more in my headcanon. The mechs are very stompy. These are heavy industrial pieces of military equipment. So when they walk around, there is thumps, there is shaking, there is a weight to what they have. And the LAMs often feel like a power fantasy above and beyond the power fantasy we are already indulging in with their mobility and all of that. And then for the practical side of things, I feel that the LAM is a land air mech. So it is designed to be a mech on the ground, and it is designed to be a fighter in the air. You are taking two incredibly specific, razor sharp toned machines and diminishing each of their capabilities in each theater so that they will have overlap. And then on top of that, you're taking a fighter pilot or a mech warrior and then cross-training them. And that is a tall order even with the best candidate. And then there's also the issues about seals and things like that, because obviously fighters operate under different pressures when they are in flight than when they are on the ground, and there are many examples of planes leaking like sieves when they're not under several G-forces.
Yeah, I am torn on them. I dislike the concept. Okay, so for the listener, we need to clarify what land air mechs are. They come from the Unseen era, and they are the most direct importation of the Gundam or Transformer type mech into Battletech.
Mm-hmm. The mecha, if you will.
Yes, they have a traditional bipedal walking mode, like the battle mechs you're used to.
Mm-hmm.
They have a hybrid mode where their wings are out, their engines are out, and their legs and arms are out. So they can walk, and then they can also kind of hop fly with jet engines or fusion engines. And then they have their fully transformed aerospace fighter mode where they're a traditional aerospace fighter. And again, this is Unseen era. They're buying artwork from the guy who does the art for Macross and the Gundam. So they've got these hybrid transforming mechas, and they need a place for them in the Battletech universe.
And this is also an era where Battletech was still defining itself, because when you look at the early novels, things like cooling vests are omitted, same with the Comstar, and of course they are major players that are super important or a very important piece of technology. So it's one of those, we are still figuring out who we are as a universe or property, and every property, unless it's a singular vision, has some of those growing pains, especially collaborative works.
So, like I was saying, I dislike them on a mechanical level because, like you were pointing out, there's so many things that can go wrong with it when it's trying to transform from a mech to a fighter and something in between. And it's reflected in the rules. You can take damage that causes you to be stuck in whatever configuration you're currently in. And as a military person, there's the whole KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid.
Yep.
And this lambs violate that on so many levels. I mean, so do battlemechs, but lambs are such another level of violating it because of the transforming capability.
Yeah, it takes that violation and raises it to the power of 2.
But on a functionality, like if we ignore that and we say they've made it work reliably enough that it's a feasible combat machine, if we give them that, I go, you know what? They're not as good a fighter as a proper aerospace. They're not as good a battle mech as an actual battle mech. But what they do and what I like about them is their potential for spec ops and recon.
I will concede that for a recon slot, they would excel because they do have that speed and mobility, but that isn't enough to justify it.
Well, I mean, you think about it and you go, okay, we can send this mech out and have it fly over the battle space and say, hey, I see a giant cloud of dust over there that's probably moving forces, but I can't get a good enough view from this altitude. I'm I'm going to drop down nearby and then use my all-terrain mech capabilities to get close and find a hiding spot to watch them move past to count how many enemy units there are.
No, I totally get the power fantasy of that. Don't get me wrong.
Well, in the Spec Ops part too, you can be like, hey, we're just an innocent dropship coming in for a trading run. Push 4 lambs out the airlock before you hit Atmo, and then the lambs can fly themselves down discreetly, maneuver into position, hit some black site, get out with the information, and then rendezvous with you in outer space as a fighter. There's a lot of versatility there, which is why I'm torn. Because I want to
You do make good points. I'm not saying anything you're saying is wrong.
I want to like them for that. It's got some cool capability. It's not as good in either role as a dedicated version, but it gives you flexibility. It lets you do some cool stuff.
Yeah, the strength is its ability to switch between those roles, not the strength in any one role specifically.
But it's sheer impracticality. It's straight up violation of KISS on every level. It kind of outweighs its cool factor for me. Its versatility.
Yeah, that's fair. So on the Origin of Battlemechs feels that there is a place for lambs, but it's not one we particularly enjoy, but we don't want to deprive anybody of joy in their life. Is that fair?
I think that's fair.
Yeah. Our sources for today are Sarna, Battletech Battlemech Manual, Master Unit List, TRO 3039, Record Sheets 3039 Unabridged, Historical Operation Klondike, TRO 3085 Project Phoenix, Record Sheets 3085 Project Phoenix, and TRO and RS Prototypes. We are supported by our Patreons at patreon.com/ontheoriginofbattlemechs. Our social media on Twitter is at Origin of Mechs. We also have a dedicated channel on the Everything Battletech Discord. Feel free to stop by and say hi. If you have any questions, requests for topics, or wish to contact us, our email is ontheoriginofbattlemechs@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, I encourage you to let your friends know about us and to leave a review. Special thanks to my friend Laura for the intro and outro. Class dismissed. Everybody have a great day.
Peace out, Mech Warriors.
Module complete. System standby. Would you like to load the next module?
Just get a little drinky poo here.